Hello, fellow lovers of the liminal of the weird. Welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. Once again, I am joined by Richard Rempel from Vintage SF. Thank you very much for being here, Richard. Also, thank you for these bookmarks.
Oh, you're welcome.
I use them in all of my books now. I love them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saved the big postcard, the Borges postcard for larger books.
Yeah.
Yeah, if
Well, you
anybody's
can't beat some of that. Can't beat some of that vintage art from some of the books. And so, of
seriously.
course, I would use that for my bookmark.
Yeah.
Yeah. If anybody wants, they can go to my channel and they can fire me an email, and I'll send them to them if they want.
Yeah, you pay postage and you can get
Yep,
all
I'll
these
take care.
bookmarks.
Well, you know what? I'll even take care of it if somebody doesn't want to pay for the postage. It's not too much.
Y'all should pay for postage.
Ah.
I think you can click this and it does something.
Yeah, it's a QR code, so it'll take you right to my channel.
That's so cool. Sorry, I just saw that and I was like, I haven't talked to you about this yet, so thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
Today, thanks for joining me today. We're going to continue our discussion on James Tiptree Jr.'s Houston, Houston, Do You Read? This time we're going to be doing a plot spoiling deep read. So yeah, we've already discussed the beginning of the story. We've already done the synopsis. If you'd like to catch up on that, go ahead and watch the video that I published right before this one, which will give you all of that information. So from here on out, we are just going to jump into the middle of the story and talk about that all the way up to the ending. So, all right. And again, this is an easy read. So if you haven't read this, you can go read it so quick. I don't know how much these are going for on eBay. I have no idea, but I doubt they'd be that expensive.
I picked it up cheap in the used bookstore. I think it was only $1 or $2.
Yeah, I think that's what I paid as well. But like I said, I've had this one for a long time. So yeah, go ahead. Did you want to start off, Richard, or?
Well, we've been talking about in the previous video a lot about gender and how
Mm-hmm.
Tiptree Jr., who is Alice Sheldon, was adept at portraying both genders. And one of the things is she was able to portray some very negative things about each gender as well.
Yes.
And this story is definitely focused in on trying to understand a little bit about genders and the way they relate to each other. And it comes up with a very controversial future. And I'll let you go more into that. I don't want to. It feels like I'm spoiling something, but I guess we're talking about a deep dive here.
Yeah, we can now spoil everything.
Yeah.
So
we're in the spaceship and we have them all in the spaceship with the women. So they're all together and we're finding out there's some differences. And one of the people in there, Andy, is a bit of an androgynous person. And so that is part of that ominous feeling that we talked about in the previous video, where they're starting to feel a little bit at unease with only hearing about women. And there's also what appears to be twins who are very much alike.
Yeah, the Judys. They even have the same name, Judy and Judy.
Yeah. And so maybe I'll let you take it off from here, and I'll come back in again when I have an opinion on some of the things that you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm just going to do the whole plot spoiler now, I think. So basically, these guys jumped 300 years into the future, and what happened while they were doing this jump is that there was a plague that hit Earth that basically wiped out all the men. Also, it made it so that women something XY chromosome, I don't remember. Anyway, all the men are gone, and there's 11,000 survivors of this plague, and they're all women. So this is a completely female society. And then they're like, oh, Andy's a boy, and later on in the story it's revealed that he is a woman taking testosterone. So yeah, this is a society, this is a matriarchy. And of course the Dave and Bud and Dr. Lorimer all come from the 70s, which is a patriarchy. So the concept of this being a utopia that becomes a dystopia is really turned on its head here, because in a weird way, I think it depends on the reader. whether this is a utopia that turns into a utopia or a utopia that turns into a dystopia. Because one of the brilliant things that I think the Tiptree does throughout this entire novel or novella is showing how difficult it is for either gender to live in a society where they are controlled by another gender, if that makes sense. So the way that she presents a matriarchal clone society is terrifying. I mean, especially to Dave. Really, Dave is the one that is there to show, because Dave represents the patriarchy. He is the top. He's the captain of the ship. He's the boss. He's a kind of he's very much a Christian. So like he is all the power that is what James Tiptree saw as power in her time. And to him, this concept of women being in control or not control, as the way he sees it, because there's no hierarchy at all, is terrifying to him. And then, of course, like Bud is the sexuality of men, and we'll get into that in a minute when we talk about this drug. And Lorimer is this weird center character. He is able to truly understand and look at both sides, although in the end he does choose to go along with the men, which unfortunately means death for him, which we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, at first I was like, this is just a straightforward feminism book, and there is an agenda of that, but James Tiptree Jr. is not that simple. This is a complex book that looks at, like you said, the problems of both societies. Some of it in ways that I think might be too simplistic. It's weird that she says a matriarchal society can't invent things. Yeah.
Well, you know what? If we back up a little bit, before these gentlemen were rescued by these women, there was a real back and forth between the lunar base and their spaceship about whether they should actually pick up these guys. And now we get a deeper understanding, because there have been no men in society for a long time.
Right.
And they're not sure if they want to introduce something into their society again that they've been without for a long time.
Right.
And there's one scientific reason that potentially they want to have these men there, and it's a bit of a harvesting of DNA in a way that perhaps could benefit their society, since they're cloning each other.
Right.
And that's why these twins that are there, they're clones. And so these 11,000 survivors are cloned multiple times, and they have a special relationship with their clones.
Yeah,
there's the population that's out there right now.
They call them sister daughter, as they and each clone embraces the wonderful parts of all the line of clones before them. It's really interesting, this clone relationship. And there's two Judys on board, and their last names are the cities they came from, and I think it's Dakar and Paris, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really, really beautifully described, these clones. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. You're going on exactly where I was thinking. So yeah, now we have these men in this situation, and they're starting to pick up these hints.
Yeah.
There's something going on here. And I can't remember some of the little clues that go on with that, but it's easy for us to start to have that uneasy feeling as well, and to wonder why we're not really meeting any men besides an androgynous person. And even there, we're starting to question what is happening here too, because Andy doesn't quite exactly match some of the male stereotypes that she's talked about with the other crew members already.
Yeah. And another thing that they were worried about, Lunar Base was worried about, is they straight up were like, you guys might have sex. like you cannot have sex with these guys, and we're really worried about that. But again, this is a society where there is no structure. Truly, I mean, there is structure. There's structure of cloning and all that kind of stuff, but there is no hierarchical structure. Everybody is kind of free to make their own choices, which you think would be total chaos, but Tiptree posits that in a matriarchal society of Earth, there would not be chaos in this. That everybody would work to help the community and society, which is where we get a little bit of this utopian concept.
And there's a sphere of the men that they're going to be aggressive, that they will poison their society, that they'll seek to take over the ship potentially if they are allowed to be on there. And so they're being very careful about that, and to the point eventually where they drug them. And I
Yeah,
think that's the next step that we have to talk about.
right. They drug them, and that's where the story opens. After the embarrassing memory of Lorimer in his youth, we cut to this weird. It feels like a party scene where these two crews are hanging out together. But basically, the women give them a drug that completely destroys their inhibitions, and this becomes a huge question for me ethically about this novel, because this allows or forces, we could almost say, the men to reveal what their inner thoughts are. It's a truth serum, basically.
And it's not even their inner thoughts, it's the dark desires that they have.
Yeah, yeah, and Bud is decides he's going to have sex with one of these women, one of the Judys, I believe, and this is one of the most wild and disturbing sex scenes I've ever read in science fiction, because he doesn't realize that his inner monologue is coming out of his mouth. So he's like, "Oh, you're beautiful. I love you. You're so great." And he's trying to like seduce her into having sex with him. But then he says the most foul stuff about like calling her all these nasty names, and basically talking about her like she's nothing more than this kind of plain Jane that he's decided that he's willing to have sex with, and it just gets darker and darker and darker, and this is kind of, I feel like, presented as the truth of sex, this double standard, at least in this specific instance. But I feel like James Tiptree Jr. is saying something about sexual relationship between men and women with this, either way. And the wild thing about this is I was terrified the entire time for the Judy, but the Judy doesn't care. She's almost laughing this whole thing off, and in the end collects his sperm, which we were talking about, gets his DNA.
And you know what? I think that Tiptree has really been careful in terms of presenting the three male crew members, because she's giving us three male aspects. And so obviously this is an aggressive sexual um, male domination type aspect that we see with Bud, which is very shocking.
And now what we'd
But
call
the other
toxic,
ones are very interesting in their own right too, in terms of how they present themselves
right?
after being drugged.
Dave. Dave says earlier, before the drug, he says, "What could one man with a gun do in this society?" Like straight up,
Yeah.
like he knows that he could go down there and take over everything.
And I guess, you know what, we should say that when they get drugged, the women reveal their society to them.
Yes.
So they are now aware of what the society is, and it
Oh yeah.
horrifies and shocks and disgusts a few of them.
Yeah, Bud is actually trying to beat up Andy because he keeps interfering with him and Judy, and he starts punching Andy, and Andy's excited about this. He's like, "I can feel it," but eventually
That
Lorimer's the one that realizes, and he yells out, "Dude, that's a woman! Stop punching!"
that was interesting, that feeling thing, because it seems like this matriarchal society has an absence of some feelings that this crew craves to feel, even though they're very negative feelings.
Right. And I wonder if that's Tiptree saying, if you take out all the males, the violence goes away. So they're
Yeah,
all obsessively interested in violence. Because, like I said, Judy, it feels like an SA, a sexual assault. It really does. But
yeah.
Judy is like almost giddily, it seems like, enjoying this. It's so strange because they are so interesting to the women. And then Dave, yeah, who's like, no, we're gonna put everything back to rights. You need to get right with God. You need to serve men, and he's just throwing out all this rhetoric. But what happens is the women start giving them injections after they collect Bud's semen. They give him an injection, and he just kind of lulls, and they pull him out, and we slowly begin to realize. And then Dave. And it's very important. Dave ends up with a gun.
Mhm.
And I don't know, did he get that from their ship?
Yeah, he had brought it along on from
Yeah,
his ship into their ship,
yeah,
and he's ready to just everything apart. They're trying to convince him, "Hey, it's really way too dangerous to fire a gun in the
yeah,
spaceship." His buddy Lorimer is trying to talk him down.
yeah, yeah. And Dave is really interesting because I believe Dave is right that if he was down there with a gun, the havoc that he could wreak, he might be able to overthrow uh, a situation. But he doesn't realize that that is exactly the problem. That he is straight up showing them exactly why there's no way they can bring these men back to Earth,
Yeah.
because even one of them can introduce this violence back into society that would destroy everything that they had built, right? And that's
It's
what's
like
been.
it's like the male gender is the pandemic that they're
Yeah,
trying to avoid.
yeah, yeah. And again, I know this is sounding like intense feminism to a crazy degree, and I don't want to present it as such, because what it is James Tiptree Jr. Using the analogy, using science fiction to say, like, what would be the difference between a society run by each gender? Because the little spaceship, the Sunbird, is a all male patriarch. It absolutely is. And of course, the Gloria spaceship is a little matriarch, and she's showing the positives and negatives. But the most important thing she's showing is they can't exist together. That either way, one of them is screwed. Because I don't know if these women in the end, so that the injections they're giving them in, they're killing them. They're killing them. And that to me doesn't make this matriarchal society a very ethical society. And there's a very important point where Lorimer is like, what the hell is wrong with you people? Those were good men. You gave them drugs. They would not have done that if you did not give them drugs. And I don't know if that's 100% true, but
But
he
he's
said
saying
that.
that there's an element of self-control and restraint that people have, that they can, that even if they have these tendencies or these thoughts, these dark thoughts,
Mhm.
that we all have dark thoughts, that we can be restrained and respectful
Yeah,
despite that. And if you take away that inhibition, then you are not acting fairly to these people.
right. Yeah, how
And
would the women react on that drug? You know what I
yeah,
mean?
exactly.
Yeah, and if they were in a patriarchal society and given that drug, what would they do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I don't think that James Tiptree Jr. intended us to go, "Yay, the women are right here." I don't think that was the answer at all. I think we were supposed to go, "Wow, this is an effed up situation."
Ultimately, I think it really was an amazing analogy to show us the tension that exists between men and women,
Yeah,
the attraction that exists between men and women, and how those are eerily mixed together. And there's some sort of an answer of respect of involved here, but we don't get to that with this society. They do not believe that they can coexist in a respectful way.
Right. And that's the final moment
Mhm.
is that Lorimer understands they're both dead and understands that it's a matriarchy on Earth. And they ask him after Dave is killed, they're like, do you think we could let any of these two like walk around on Earth? And then the question becomes, can we let any of you walk around on Earth? At which point, Lorimer chooses, instead of going and trying to be a part of that matriarchal society, which I don't even know if they gave him.
I don't think he had a choice.
Right.
I think that he realized he was doomed,
Yeah. So
and
he
but
chooses.
he still was very, although he's cognizant of it, he was continuing the conversation till he did die.
Right.
Yeah.
And he chose to drink instead of
Mhm.
get the injection. He chose to just kill himself. I don't know what YouTube flags. I have no idea. But anyway, he chooses to just end his own life instead of going. Well, I don't even know if there is an instead, but he chooses to do it his way instead of their way, and they let him drink the death stuff instead of having it injected. This is Ursula K. Le Guin with teeth. I don't know. That's a weird thing to say because Ursula K. Le Guin is awesome and really deals with important stuff, including gender in a lot of her stories. But I feel like this is like a short shock version of this question. Like this is um, like amped up
It's a
version of this.
it's a sharp, even controversial take, whereas I felt like Gwen I always say that she has hope and
Yeah,
soul in her stories, and even though she presents things which, reflect about gender or different parts of our society in conflict with each other, there's a heart and a positivity in it,
yeah,
and this one, it just goes for the jugular, and
yeah.
so they're very different in that way, but they're still approaching many same issues in different parts.
And the way you just said that, and it's no wonder Harlan Ellison loved James Tiptree Jr. because I think Harlan Ellison was also a shock writer in that way that he
Yeah.
liked to go right for the jugular. So yeah, I can see why Ellison
I
would love her.
He liked Le Guin too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's
The
true.
Word is Forest is another one in that collection, I think you said, there.
True. This really reminded me of the first story in Terminal Boredom by Izumi Suzuki,
Mm,
who is a kind of an iconic Japanese science fiction writer.
mm,
And I've done a couple of her stories on the channel, but the story I'm thinking of directly here is called Women and Women. And this one I did on the Patreon. So if you want to watch my thoughts on this one, it's on the Patreon. This is another look at, I would say, an unethical matriarchy, a split between the sexes. In this one, all the men are in camps and are treated like animals and basically are just there to collect semen from. And this society where women uh, run the whole spectrum of genders is really really wild, and this does the same thing where it seems like most of the story it's talking about the pain that patriarchy caused and the intense response of the matriarchy revolution, but then in the end it ethically questions both. And it's really genius. And if I ever made anthologies, which I would love to do, I would put these two stories right next to each other because I think they discuss the same question. Really wonderful. Would you have anything else to say? Did I miss anything, Richard?
Oh, and you just talked about putting those side to side. What I find really amazing about this tour double is that they put Houston, Houston, Do You Read
Yeah,
side by side with Joanna Russ's
yeah,
Soul, which you'll find on my channel. We're going to be talking about that, or it, as it's already out there if you're interested in seeing it,
yeah.
because they really were good companion pieces in terms of talking about gender and the way that men and women interact with each other.
Yeah, I don't usually I don't know how much thought has been put into doubles
Mhm.
of what story goes with which. This is the first one I've ever read. Well, Samuel Delaney had two of his stories put into a double that he felt should go together, and those really did work well. But this is two different writers, and they match each other so beautifully. It's really wonderful, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in Richard's video, which is already up, and I'll make sure to link that down in the description here. All right, I think that's about it. Is there anything else you wanted to say about this?
No, no, I'm just, it's so great that we were reading it at the same time. I'm so happy that we were able to have this long discussion together.
Seriously, that was just that was serendipitous. It was wonderful. I'm glad. I mean, we had no plans at all to
Yep.
do this together, and then we both just happened to read the same book. All right. Well, thanks for being on the channel, Richard. I really appreciate it,
Oh, you're welcome.
and
My
I'm sure
pleasure.
we'll be talking in the future. I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.